you know, there's a few things that you grapple with when you look at, for example, the sentencing guidelines, which I think is the foundation for the 2020 and the 2019 DOJ guidance, because they frame it around that, you know, standards of conduct, education, et cetera. And, you know, when you talk about training effectiveness, that as well as the incentives piece, you know, in terms of incentives to encourage ethical behavior, you know, effectiveness in education and incentives to encourage ethical behavior, I think are some of the two of the things that, you know I've been grappling with to, you know, do something that more than just provide lip service to it. But, you know, focusing on the effectiveness piece, you know, there's a couple, I think there's a few different ways there's many different ways to tackle it. But, you know, what we think about is, you know, when we push out online, you know, education, which actually we're getting ready to do right now, you know, we think about, okay, make it concise, make it robust, make it engaging, you know, find ways to make people stay with it. You know, so even if, you know, you have, when I always go back to the 61 slides on the PowerPoint, and you can slide, you know, put that up on the internet and people will flip through it. And, you know that it's how quickly can I get through these 61 slides? Because if I skip one, I'm not going to get the completion score in my online training. So, you know, they're just flipping through it as fast as they can, and it's not sinking in. But if it's some sort of presentation that doesn't look and feel like a slide deck, but it's, you know, it's talking to you, whether it's people or avatars or animation, things are moving around. You may have check-in points periodically where, you know, well, this is what we just learned. Let's answer a couple of questions about it. You know, that's basic stuff that we've all seen in different types of scenarios or situations, you know. But if you do those sorts of things, every few minutes, stop and have a check-in. You know, a couple of questions on the scenario, the vignette that you just heard. You know, sales rep walks into a doctor's office, and, you know, certain things may happen. And then you get asked two questions. What should John do? Should John go this way, or should John go that way? Or, you know, why did John make the decision that he made? Things like that. And I think those sorts of things, if you have to make a choice in terms of answering a question, whether it's, you know, true or false, or A, B, C, and D, multiple choice, I think those are ways, that's one of the ways that the education can be a bit stickier. You know, you can do pre-assessments as well. We're thinking about that. Like if you're going to do, for example, T&E training, you know, travel and expense training. If someone is going to a jurisdiction that may be higher up on the risk profile to conduct business, then maybe before they go, rather than just give them a boatload of annual training every year, maybe you reserve certain things for when people travel or engage in certain activities. So maybe 2 weeks before they travel, once they book the flight, if you will, in the travel system, Amex or Concur or whatever, which you have to usually do a month in advance anyway, just to get the best rate, you know, if that's what your corporate policy is. Then if you have to book your travel a month in advance, a week after you book it, you have to have maybe T&E training. And then you do some sort of pre-assessment. Do they know what the T&E policy is in the global policy or the regional policy? And then maybe you have a 3-question or 5-question or 10-question assessment quiz. And depending on how well they score, the actual education can be modified. Rather than give them the 20-minute training, maybe they can get the 5 or the 10-minute training based on how they answer the pre-assessment questions. And that way, you know what the base of knowledge is, maybe on T&E or other things, other topics or other subjects. And you can have all that data, like Janelle talked about. That's data that you can use to assess not just individual knowledge, but also collective knowledge, maybe of a certain function or department or management level. You know, all the VPs, you know, got this type of score or within this range, all the managers got a different range. And maybe you can start targeting your training based upon the collective results of either individuals or people at certain compensation levels or people in certain functions. You can start targeting it in that sort of way based on the stickiness or the effectiveness of the prior training and the current training. That's one way to go. Assessing it in pre-assessment and some sort of post-assessment quiz, I think really gives you a sense of, one, is your training good? And two, is it effective in terms of, you know, getting the message across? and people listening to it and watching it and understanding it. Those are just a couple of suggestions, but there are obviously many more ways that you can go.
Yeah, it's a rich arena, and I always smile at this question because obviously being the data science nut that I am, this is like deep area of passion, right? And it's great to see kind of the allusion to, hey, we need to get more targeted, right? We need to get more adaptive to the individual. I know, Janelle, this is an area of deep passion and focus for MMC as well. So what are you guys doing around measuring?
I actually want to start by saying, like, first of all, Michael took like all the good answers. So those are all of the things that you should absolutely be doing as like a foundation, right? Looking at the training that you're rolling out. But I think, I sat back and was thinking about other maybe non-conventional things that you can try to pull from, right? So what are other trends that you can look at? Trends in your hotline data. What are people reporting before and after your training? Look at it over a number of years, not just, over a number of months, but you can really start to get some interesting information if you look at that. I also think about investigations, so can you look at your investigations, not only on a macro scale, but start to drill down and get more granular what's going on with a particular region of the world or a particular business unit. The more granular you can get sometimes, the better you might be able to take that risk-based approach that you mentioned, Neha, for your retraining and then your future training. Are there areas of non-compliance that you can actually quantify and measure over time, right? Are there specific errors that you're seeing in your incident reports? Can you start to look at things before and after your training that can tell you whether or not it has actually worked? Because really, at the end of the day, listen, I am an excellent test taker, right? And I think at a certain point in life, we all know how to take and pass an exam. You know how to sit through a 30-minute training and get the right answers. But it's really about the real world effect. So the more that you can look at the actual colleague behavior in the real world, I think that is when you're really, it's when you're really like cooking with gas, as a friend of mine likes to say. It's like, are you actually influencing the human behavior?
Yeah.